Good evening, YouTube friends. This is Ray J. How's everything going? And welcome back to my YouTube channel, the Ray J Recording Experience. Anyways, it is Monday, December 16th, and as I said in my first episode, that I was going to run through my recording setup. So I guess I will start with what I'm using for a digital audio workstation, then along with my audio interfaces that I'm using, along with my speakers, my guitar setup, like as far as my pedals and amplifier, I say one amplifier, and I can run you through my bass setup, my drums, all that good stuff. So anyways, I guess let's get started. So first things first, I have to grab the camera here. As you can see, I am using Studio One Professional version 3. And the reason why I'm using Studio One version 3 is because of this. I have a Mac Mini from 2011, and I feel that honestly, I'm not doing any more updates or upgrades on that particular version. It works really well for me, and I believe in certain things, the old saying of, if it's not broke, don't fix it, because it seems to be working well for me. So that's where I'm at with that. So again, I use Studio One, Persona Studio One version 3, along with my Mac Mini from 2011 with 16 gigs of RAM, and that seems to work pretty well. I upgraded the memory in it, and that made a big difference as far as plug-in capacity. As far as the interface goes, I'm using my Focusrite Claret 4 interface. It has on the front end 4 mic pre's, and then also on the back there's actually 4 TRS inputs that you can use for external preamps to run on the back side, along with a light pipe, which is great. It gives you an ADAT input light pipe, which I'm using right now. I'm using the Focusrite Octapre. It's the MK2 Dynamic. Now the Dynamic means that there are built-in compressors, one knob compressors. And you can see, I'll kind of zoom in here a little closer. It actually has your gain and then the compressor. So from to the right it's squashy, and to the left it's lefty little loosey. But it's pretty good. It's nice. So as soon as you engage the compressor, you could tell like all your soft notes seem to come up, and it doesn't like really squash the sound, you know, going to the recording. It's not like a hard compression, but it does make a difference, and it helps with some of the peaks. You know, if you're really smacking the snare hard, it does help with some of the peak, you know, the peak hits and stuff like that. So it does make a difference. It's helpful for in a recording situation. Here's some mics I use. I am a fan of SE Electronics. I got these a couple years back, and I just tried a bunch of different ones. I ended up getting like 2 of each, and then I ended up getting an extra X1D mic. They're the drum mics, because they went on a blowout sale like a year ago, and I had to get them because I had one. I was like, oh man, I got to get these other 2, and so I have 3 of those, but 2's shown here because one's in my bass drum right now, and they're all, you know, needing phantom power, so they're not a dynamic mic. Now the X1Rs, they actually, believe it or not, sorry for the bump there, but they are dynamic. They don't require phantom power. They're a ribbon mic. So they work pretty nice. You got to gain them up a lot, but here's another one right here. And then also over here, another SE mic that I use for vocals. This is called the X1. And it's an SE X1 with the little vocal booth thing, the isolator, that seems to help out with vocals when you're recording in such a tight space like my room. It does make a difference with reflections. So that's what I'm using for the vocals. And we'll go back over here to my guitar rig setup here. I have from the input side here, I'm using a Keeley compressor along with a Morley Bad Horsey Wah. And then next in line, I'm using a Rufus Reloaded pedal from Sur as a fuzz. And then the OCD Overdrive pedal from Full Tone. The Helix Phaser pedal from TC Electronics. The Univibe pedal, Dunlop. Also Electro Harmonics Small Clone Chorus. A Zvex Sonar pedal, which is a tremolo pedal. It's also like a step slicer. It takes the sound, like if you're doing some rhythmic patterns, it really sounds great because it like chops the sound up pretty good on the guitar. Also the Canyon Echo delay pedal with the MXR tap. Then out of that, I'm running into a direct drive, JDX Radial direct drive. I can't talk. But this thing is pretty cool because I go directly right into my interface. And it's kind of a cabinet amp sim. I'm using it right now in the bright with the combo setting, which is supposed to emulate, I believe it's supposed to emulate like a Fender, just like a Fender Twin. But I don't know, I like the tone. It's nice, it works good, especially when you don't want to wake up the family. Then there's also an output on it that goes to the input of my amplifier, which is the Vox AC10. This is an all tube amp. This thing sounds great. It's it breaks up really well by itself. You don't need much to drive it. I put a little bit of overdrive and it sounds great, but just overall it's a good amp, especially in a small room like I'm at. I'll put a 609 in front of it, a Sennheiser or a 57, or I'll do 2 or whatever on it, and it seems to work pretty nice. Then when I don't want to wake up the family or whenever, I can put this cab clone, Mesa Boogie cab clone. I use that, and it's a little bright, so combining this cab clone along with the radial drive, the direct drive, and blend the two channels together, it sounds really good. So if I don't want to be loud, I use that, and that seems to work out. And that's kind of like, I use plugins. I use the Positive Grid stuff and Amplitube, but I use that from time to time, or both of them. I just kind of mix it all up. But some of those plugins, guitar plugins, sound really good too, so I just mix everything. Then we'll go back to the bass guitar. There's my tuner, and then I have a Spectra comp for the input side of the bass, and I'll go through the Dark Glass Alpha Omega DI, and I love this thing, man. This thing sounds so good. It's a good DI, and then the old trusty Sans amp from Tech 21. This thing I've had forever, and it's worked wonders for me in the studio for a lot of different situations and even live. This has been in my live setup for a long time when I was running sound. So anyways, that's the bass rig set up there. I'll bounce between the two or combine the two, and then also using Positive Grid again for some of my bass guitar inputs, and it works well. And then, I don't know if I did this or not, but there's my bass guitar. It's a Warwick Streamer Standard from early 2000s, and I'm using a Gibson, not a Gibson, well, it's an Epiphone Les Paul. I got this like 3 years ago, and it works really nice for my setup. It sounds good. The pickups in it are pretty good. Not real noisy, but it does. It works for me. Someday I want to definitely get a nicer guitar, maybe 1 or 2 different guitars, a Strat or something like that. I'm really falling in love with Strat tones lately, so that always is a good thing. There's my percussion back there. Just little bongos, tambourine shakers and stuff I use for mixing in stuff, some percussion in the songs. And then, oops, sorry for the jingle jangle on the old camera here. And last but not least, my favorite part of my whole setup here is the drums. As you can see here, this here is a custom kit that a good friend of mine built me. His name's Lou Ross. He's out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Lou built this for me about 18 years ago, 19 years ago, and it's been with me ever since, and absolutely my favorite drum set I've ever owned in my life. And I've had quite a few and this one outlasted them all, and this is it. Anyways, it's a 14 by 24 inch bass drum, all maple drums. I'm using a 12 by 7 mounted tom, so it's a short tom. Lou actually cut the bearing edges, like he rounded them like a 30-degree angle, real nice old school kind of. We were talking about this whenever he was making it, if I wanted it kind of like a Slingerland kind of rounded bearing edges, and he was able to get that to happen for me, and it really makes a big difference with the way the drums sound when they, especially when they're tuned wide open. And in the back there's a floor tom. That's a 15 by 13, so it's just a shorter 13 inches deep, 15 round. And then also an old WFL snare drum that a friend of mine, Jim, gave me. And this is my favorite snare drum of all time. So that's why it's on my favorite kit. And it's a 5x14. It's 50s WFL. And I ended up getting this whole kit wrapped just over the years of getting banged up and things. And the snare drum itself was painted blue, so I ended up having the bearing edges recut and wrapped along with this whole entire setup here. Originally it was stained. It was a satin oil finish that Lou made it for me, and it sounded really good and open. But what ended up happening was I had some issues with just road wear, and it ended up getting stained somehow, some way. Something damaged the finish on it, so I ended up getting it wrapped in this tangerine sparkle. So that's the way the kit looks. I'm using flat based hardware from Tama. They're really nice because they're a small footprint, so if you're in a small room like I am, definitely it does work out really well. So here's behind the kit. And you're probably wondering, why is all the tape on the drums? Well, I'm doing a couple things right now. The songs I'm writing, a little more harder rock sounding stuff, and I was looking for some more attack. So what I'm doing is I'm blending these drums in with Steven Slate trigger drums too. So trying to blend the sounds together, just kind of give it a little more oomph to the mix. But that's about it. I'm using Sabian cymbals. Freak crashes, freak ride, ozone crash over there, AX stage crash, splash, and freak hi-hats. There's my practice pad. And see the overheads, I'm using ME5s, Rode ME5s that work pretty good for the overheads. I got them up pretty high for in this room, but the closer I get a real lot of, you know, sibilance, little high-end stuff that's just unbearable. But it seems like when I take them further away, it works better and tracks well, and I don't have to fiddle with the EQs too much. So that's that. Along with I'm using a 57 on the tom, an i5, which is Audic's version of a 57 on the floor tom, a 609 on the snare, and an Audic's F15 on the hi-hat and the ride. And inside my bass drum is a X1D SE mic. So that's what I'm pretty much using around in this room. As you can see, along with this ribbon mic, I'll put the ribbon mic on, and I'll switch this microphone out in the room. So it just varies what I'm trying to get at. I might use an X1D, the R, or the X1, or just any of the other mics. Just depends on what I'm looking for as far as a mono room sound. And that's about the extent of it. And then, of course, really important is just having some inspiration on the walls. I got the Police, which I've been such a huge fan of the Police since I was a little kid. So when you're getting back behind the drums and you look behind you and you got John Henry Bonham behind you and John Lennon and some of these other bands that I'm very inspired by, Brad and the Big Wreck and stuff like that, as you can see, Black Sabbath, and it works for me. So that's my rig rundown. I know I didn't get too elaborate with all the different things that it does and all that, but that's what the other episodes are for, right? So I hope you guys enjoy. Take care of yourselves. Much inspiration. And like I said, having your own studio, the main result at the end of the day is just being inspired. Make the best recordings that you can with what you got. Build on that. Build your songs. And be your best critic, worst critic, whatever you want to be. As long as you're happy with the recording, that's all that counts. You know, it's all about what you want, you know, and stay inspired and keep writing and recording. And please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to keep building on this. And my next episode, I'm going to walk through the whole process of recording. Just kind of recording from a scratch track, building it on the drums, kind of like go through my workflow, how I normally do things, and it does change all the time, but I got a little general thing that I kind of work around that works for me in my own little domain here. So all right, well, I'll talk to you soon and have a good night. Take care.